Hi, guys. It's Sarah May Bates. This is an episode kind of about fear of inadequacy, but also consciousness. And it is based on an insight. I feel like a lot of people have a deep, unseen fear of inadequacy. Like whether you're a parent, whether you are a college student, whether you are a young professional, an old professional. It's one of those things that hides from view because it threatens our ability to function, like this idea of we're not good enough. And however, it's kind of like a foundational belief in within the ego, and therefore it's like I think just built into a lot of people. And that fear of inadequacy creates a lot of static and defensiveness and complication in our everyday flow. And I think if we were more aware of it or could notice it, it would allow us to move through life from a place of self manifested love and safety. And I think that's because when we notice it, we can kind of do a workaround with ourselves where we hold ourselves and then process it and then can move on from a place of confidence, safety, and love. I think another way that fear of inadequacy shows up is in the feeling of scarcity, like a focus on the idea of there's not enough. I have to try harder. I'm always going to be chasing. I'm always going to be grasping. So this is an episode with working with that in particular. And before I go into this episode, I wanted to talk about a recent experience that sort of set it up for me. And I just recently had one of those moments where I noticed I had changed. Yeah, I don't know if you can relate to that, where you get to a stage when you're like, oh, I'm different now. And you look back at a former self that was maybe more troubled or maybe more graspy. And there's that realizing when we notice that we have embodied something that we've been trying to embody for a very long time. And we see, wow, I now own more of myself. I am more in the seat of myself in a deeper way. So I recently realized I had this kind of change and I could feel it in just my quality of consciousness, I guess. And I feel a lot more close to myself, close to the world. I don't know if this is something that is related to what I've been working on or it's something that's related to consciousness change, but either way, I think it happened in part because of my aspirations and having a goal in mind of processing specifically things that I was not proud of, like anger is one of them. And because that is something that's very ego threatening, like whenever there's something you're not proud of about yourself, you have to go into it and you have to like dig in it and really be open to accepting that as true of yourself. And so in that process, I think what we do is we separate from ego as a judgment on who we are, and we can kind of see around the edges of it. And I think it only really happens when we feel we're willing to go into something that feels unsafe to explore. I think one core trait of ego is that it's built upon the primal hidden fear in all humans. And unless you work to unearth it, unless you work on that fear of like I'm not good enough, then you can't understand that the falsity of it. It's like if you have that hidden fear of like I'm not good enough, the other side of that belief is actually I expect myself to be perfect. I should be perfect, which is, as you can hear, a crazy and stupid thing to expect of ourselves. And it's not only impossible and false, it's also a really harmful ideal. Like, even if it were attainable, it's based on a belief that perfect is good. Perfect is also a culturally created definition. And it's it's also created by our life experiences, but it's this warped kind of ball of glass that we think in our blind ego that translates to if I'm perfect, I will be happy and healthy. But in reality, it does not translate. Like if you actually were able to attain perfection, it does not translate to being happy and healthy. So this expectation of ourselves that we should reach for perfection is also the one that enables us or sets up the basis for us to push others down and think of others then as less than. So it's like they're kind of one and the same. And that feeling of needing to push others down is also what causes us to be more materialistic. It's like materialism is really built on a belief that we need something more to feel satisfied and whole. I say that as a person who loves nice things and loves stuff. Like I love stuff and I love, my German car. Like there are so many things that are materialistic about, what we enjoy in the world. But I'm just saying, as a personality trait, if you are defensive and if you have you feel more grounded when you have others under you, like you push others down, that's a symptom of being more defined by that hidden belief that you are unworthy. So it's like they're two sides of the same coin. It's very interesting. And so if you are a person who is, there's something in your life that's really bugging you about you, like those things that kind of stick like thorns in your consciousness and your memory, like they kind of replay and you cringe. Those are all little capsules that are ripe with potential for growth. If we just go into them and dig around in them and we kind of untangle all the little individual beliefs that have created them, it's because something in us doesn't sit right with us and we don't understand why. So when we can work with those little blocks in particular, like by looking into them, we get a little bit closer to ourselves. We grow in our personal experience of wholeness, peace, joy, love, connection to others, and our love reservoir grows more expansive. So from a less than fear-driven place, we are we're constantly chasing something outside to booster ourselves. And when we can have less fear and we have more self-acceptance, more openness, we just feel more calm. I think the underlying current that is created is I don't need to apologize for who I am or get wrapped up in manipulation or the need to please others because ultimately how that makes me feel when I do that is going to be me on me. It's like I, at the end of the day, live with me. And I just need to embrace where I am on this life path. It's just true. There's no need to alter it or change it for others. It just is. And so when you can really 100% authentically be in that space, in that intention, it's a very nice energy. It's like there's no more of the grasping and underfoot, you know, I need, like, I better have blank. I need to smile, whatever that thing, that fear of lack. It's, that's like we create such a barrier to just being present in our lives. So, with that, there are three parts to this episode: the what, the why, and the how, the tools. Part one, the what. Moving closer to freedom from ego on a casual basis. That's what I'll say. It's like, it's not like you're going to get rid of your ego forever. Maybe you will. I don't know. But like, it's always going to kind of like pop its little head out when it's a situation that's intense or stressful or, it's going to keep you functioning like the animal that we are. But when it's overactive in the wrong way, we just notice it and we can step back from it. It's like we're very aware of the way it works. And this process soothes us because it ends a battle with what is. Like there's a constant need for us to control and maintain our position in a fictional scale. It's like a fight with a fear of worthlessness. And once we can see around the fight and put it aside, it's like we're free. We can live in a peaceful state. Part two, the why. I think a lot of us have a separation from self-ownership And that is because of our past and also survival. Like we have a constant grasping need for control. We, of all people, though, need to be there for ourselves and supporting ourselves and not at ourselves. However, we all have nervous system damage of some sort. And by that, I mean just like the kind of short circuits of our wiring attached to various ages and milestones in our lives that made a dent. Like they become our no-go zones where the brain kind of goes offline. And by that I mean just moments we were traumatized, triggered, felt like really intense powerlessness and discomfort where we had to just take our brain offline. So, depending on what age those experiences happened, there is an actual change in the way your brain functions. This was a huge epiphany for me when I was in school for my MFT because it explained a lot of the lack of capacity of people in my life where I was like, oh, that's why. It's not because you're an asshole. It's just because of this very long period of your upbringing and your development where there was just a gap in what you were able to tolerate. So I say that because all of us have our own version of that, small versions, big versions. And so therefore, when we get triggered as adults who can work on ourselves, take care of ourselves, our job is to A, acknowledge the triggers, and B, move through them with what I'll call third person support for that self. In just the simple act of acknowledging where that pain is from and saying, like, I think what's happening right now is this time in my life is coming up for me. The deep fear I'm experiencing right now is I'm not going to be able to live through this or I'm not good enough, whatever it is. That third person support allows us to move past the thing we previously thought, I'm just going to die from this. I'm totally incapable. I can't tolerate it. I won't tolerate it. Like whatever those like no-go zones are, we move past them. And over not too long of a period of time, they just weaken and weaken and weaken until they're so faint. They just become little like scents that drift through the air. And that is how we become whole. Slowly over many practices, we become whole and we graduate our consciousness. That's actually what the original title of this episode was, is graduating your consciousness. Maybe I'll keep it that. It doesn't explain a lot. That's what I'm weighing right now. But confidence is really just trust in self. That's it. You're not no longer questioning. You just know. So with that, here's part 3, the how, the tools. But first, a brief word from our sponsors. Okay, before I go into the section, I just wanted to acknowledge that as a person who is in modern day society, there is a kind of tendency that we all fall into, which is to hold everything in and to continue to survive by just keeping it all in here. And we don't let it out because we feel like we might fall apart. And that really takes a lot of our resources, our creative resources, our mental resources, and it just makes our fuse shorter. And so if that feels true for you at all, if you're holding in something, if you're suffocating something, sadness, stress, whatever it is, I just want to give you permission, whatever that thing is, as you listen to this, I invite you to exhale, to allow yourself to feel whatever may want to come out. And perhaps those are tears. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a loud sound. Maybe it's just shaking and being in your body. Just let it out. Just give yourself permission to just not hold everything in. First tool, allowing floods to move out of us. You know that thing, the divining rod? It's like back in, actually, no, they still use it today. If you are a very like tuned person, like on the spectrum, for example, you have like a much higher sensitivity to the energy of things in general, of matter. Divining rods are what people use to find springs, like underground water reservoirs. And that, a stick that's shaped in a little, I don't know what to call it, 3 points converging together. They, those divining rods can feel water. This is also true for our bodies and our beings, our inner beings. There, there are times we're in a conversation and we can just feel that little like reservoir of sadness, of emotion that wants to flood out. And oftentimes we just resist it or we'll try and channel it into a different story. Our brain takes over and we want to find a label for it. We'll say it's like, oh, it's because of this stupid thing. It's because of this reason of my career. Or it's like we want to intellectualize it. And sometimes it's just a little pocket of spring water that wants to come out. And all we have to do is allow for that. Sometimes we just need to flood out some emotion and then we can be lighter. The human experience is hard, and we, of all people, must be so compassionate toward ourselves. And I say that because a lot of the time we're like, no, but I don't want to cry. I don't want to be sad. I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to feel like I'm falling apart. Or we think, why am I crying? What's wrong with me? It's because it was in your body and it had to leave. And now it's gone. And don't get caught up in the story. Sometimes there is no story. Sometimes it's just a pocket that got stuck. And there is a great sense of relief when we can all allow emotions to leave our bodies. It's like a very therapeutic release. It doesn't always have to be bad or about something. All right, the next tool is called growing our relationships or breaking the self-pity addiction. I say that because I think of self-pity as an actual addiction in the same way that um, being really fixated on aging or really fixated on weight or really fixated on money. Like there are all these kind of like addictions, or busyness is another one. Self-pity is its own drug because of the feelings, like the habitual feelings that are released when we go into self-pity. It becomes very familiar and very like addictive because it floods us with the same set of chemicals in our bodies. And so as we practice that habitual thought process of self-pity, meaning I hate myself, I'm such a loser, I regret so many things. God, that's so like me to be so selfish and mean and evil. That's an addiction and a tool to break this, especially when it comes to relationships. I'm just inviting you to do this practice. It's a 3-step manual workaround. It's like if it's sticking in your consciousness, it's a sign that something's not sitting right. So I always think of those as invitations. It's like the little capsule with growth serum in it. If you can just go into it, something is not aligned with what you believe. It's a lovely invitation for growth. So instead of going into like, I hate me, I'm the worst, it's so fucking terrible, and then just being like self pity, and like it's like a little pity party. Instead, just go right into that murky darkness of I did something wrong, I don't like it, and ask, what if I can take me out of the equation? What's left? What's left? Let's just do that. I want you to do this almost like as a journal practice. What is left now that I took me out of it? Now it's just somebody else's experience. What was the experience they felt? Just translate it. Like really get into the other person's reality. And once you've done that, I want you to ask, how can I support them in that wound? This, just the practice of trying on somebody else's vantage point is what will allow you to get into a feeling of A, not self-pity, but B, love and compassion. Because although it may not be true to your intentions, like if you have hurt somebody else, as soon as we can get into their experience and we can offer love to someone or we can support them in the way that they have been hurt, that is immediately how we have freed ourselves from the thorn. And it's also like a little door that unlocks. It's like everyone just needs to be seen. As soon as we can see somebody else over ourselves, it's like it unlocks them and they can be there with us as well. All right, the next tool, freedom hack. This is just a reminder for being free from the self-pity addiction that is ego. As soon as you have made a mistake, acknowledge it. Not to others necessarily, but to yourself. Like actualize it. And just as soon as you notice it, trace all the little roots. And if the roots are not evident, because usually the roots are something that we have not accepted that we are expecting of ourselves on an unconscious level, it's a lie. It's usually like, I am expecting myself to be blank. And as soon as you can trace the root of like, oh, I have this really fucked up expectation of myself, then you can forgive yourself readily. And then you have already started a process of change because you're no longer hiding and running from the thing. You're on the other side of it, noticing it as it's occurring in your body. It's like you've already moved closer to truth and reality, which is the only block to change. Like there really needs to be that self safe space for exploring what you are working to change. And the only thing that self-hatred and intolerance does is block change. It's a trick. It's not in service of change. When you are in self-hatred, you are actually just, it's a veiled version of I'm having the party of whipping myself with chains of self-pity. Okay, next tool, the sheer importance of energy. I just want you to think of yourself as a conduit of electricity that spreads more of itself through others, like a wire connecting to another wire, because it's quite literally what's happening. And so when you have something that comes up, like self-hatred, for example, or I feel ashamed, I feel low, I feel insecure, it's really important to pull it on out and process it. Just name it. That's it. Actualize it outside of your body. Because it's not about, I'm not telling you like go out and be fake and be like, I love myself, even if you're like feeling that inside. It's just about being able to genuinely embody your target and what your values are. And as soon as we are disconnected from ourselves because we're resisting something, we're no longer really feeling like we have the same target. It's like I'm just pretending I don't see this terrible thing. As soon as we can just name the thing we're feeling, I can come back to, but my goal, what I'm really trying to do is head toward growth and wholeness and confidence and authenticity. It's like you can remember like I'm not really this thing. This thing is occurring in me. It's not me. And then we're not as compromised by pettiness. All right, next tool. This you might have already done because of the other sections of this podcast, but as a journal exercise, I invite you to unearth your hidden primal fear. Beneath all of our grasping and explosiveness is a hidden fear. And it's usually one that we're just not aware of. We forgot it was there. We didn't know it was there. But wherever it is, it's where we are exploding. Like what I have kind of worked backward from with just anger, explosive anger, is like I hate yelling. I hate it. And when I yell, what I've realized is it was based on me not accepting a truth that there's no way that my kids are not going to be imperfect, or there's no way that I'm not going to be imperfect. Like I didn't accept that that was true. I didn't realize, no, that's just true. You're not going to ever be perfect at all. And that just really recognizing that, like, yeah, your kids are going to really fuck up and you're really going to fuck up. Just in recognizing that, I'm like, oh, I can't really be mad. There's no reason to be mad because that is actually just true. So if we can just see whatever that hidden fear is and then recognize where we're expecting some lie, it's like it just gets us closer to a more healed and aligned place for us in our own behavior. All right, next tool. Am I falling for the trick? There is a tendency toward urgency and rushing and over functioning that I think so much of society abides by today. And that is in part because we kind of fall into like an unconscious routine, just like it's really addictive to fall into a systemized routine. And also the ego has this belief that we need to boost ourselves up in order to have power and control and not die. So it's like we're constantly chasing this idea of enoughness or more than enoughness. And that's based on the fear that we're not enough already. So I think a lot of us are constantly being overactive as a means to stave off low self-worth, which allows us to feel safer because we think, I'm so overactive. I'm over delivering. I'm over scheduling. I'm efforting beyond what is kind or right to myself. And therefore, they can't say I'm worthless because they owe me. It's like that gives us a weird sense of grounding in that we're like, I know now because I'm doing all this extra shit that I am enough because they can't say I'm not enough. However, really just robbing ourselves of a positive and our birthright version of a great life experience. So I will often ask myself, just because it is easy to fall back into that habit of overfunctioning, I'll ask myself, am I falling for the trick? Am I falling for that trick of busyness and addiction to urgency? Or can I come back into trust? I am enough. Life is enough. The moment is enough. There's enough of everything. It is our birthright and the natural way to exist on the planet in expansiveness, slowness, wholeness, and the quiet, unhurried day that is filled with moments that exist with nothing to do, as nature does. And so the visual I often use for people is it's summer in Paris and the sun is setting and there's nothing to do. There's no phones, there's no internet. The only thing you are doing is sitting outside, people watching, watching the sky change. And that is your job. That is the only thing you're supposed to do. That energy just doesn't even feel like it's something we could ever have. Just that length of nothing to do, that idea of nothing to do. It's like some of us just can't even imagine it, like a life like that. But that is what life is. It shouldn't necessarily be filled with stuff and things to do and a list. All right, next tool, overreaching or taking up too much space. So when we get through this kind of processing of the feeling of worthlessness being kind of hidden in there, what we recognize is that we are overactive and taking up too much space in all of these areas of our lives. And one thing I just wanted to invite you to reflect upon is, where are there areas of your life currently where you are taking up too much space, like being overactive, unleveling the playing field? I did this a ton before I did most of my therapy work on myself. And that is because of a feeling of needing to have a leg up, a fear of of being at the mercy of others having any power over me or of owing them. It's really just the fear of not enoughness. But eventually what happens when you step back and don't overreach into areas that are not your own. And by that I mean doing other people's work for them, taking care of people in ways that they can take care of themselves, making decisions for people who should be making those decisions for themselves, taking away responsibility from other people around you. As soon as you step back and you allow others to rise, it allows you to watch them grow and you honor and respect them, but you also create spaciousness and come into your power in a very different way. Your energy changes and you're no longer in a negotiation, a constant grasping negotiation of what your actions mean. It's like you've just come into your own power and you just are your own power. So if you are a person who identifies as being controlling, just I invite you to just tune in and ask, am I getting a feeling of power and safety in the face of feelings of inadequacy? And how can I start to step back and come into my own self trust? All right. The next tool is called my wire damage. I talked earlier about nervous system damage, and just I wanted to invite you to acknowledge what your specific moments are. Like, whatever happens to recur for you, if there are areas that take you offline, what are the moments that are big ones for you? We all have them. Like for some people, it's moves. Moves are associated with loss, or for some people, the need to speak your truth and have others know your truth has so much charge and importance. And so if you haven't been able to do that in some area, it will be very traumatizing. It'll feel like you're wronging yourself. There are all these things that have big weight for us in our present day lives. And we're like, why is that? Why am I feeling such reactivity? Why is that so big? So if that's true for you, I invite you to go into what is this? What moment did this originate? No wonder. The really important thing is just to acknowledge that that is true. Just recognize we all need to be seen, just like a partner needs to be seen in their pain. You, little you, needs to be seen by big adult functioning present day self you. And just by doing that, we feel okay. We feel supported. We feel stronger. We can move through it. All right, next tool is called boundary bless. This is a weird one, but having rock solid boundaries is a really empowering, soothing state. And like a lot of people hate setting boundaries or it feels really uncomfortable. But as soon as you do it, it means you feel no tension. You have no personal qualms. And so I just bring up boundaries as something to go through, think about as you go through your day. If there is something that you do that makes you feel a little bit iffy about your own values, that's a wishy-washy boundary. And as soon as you can recognize that that is actually creating a feeling of lack of safety, it's creating much more static in your life than is worth it. Like an example is I got an extra thing from Amazon. Maybe I'll just keep it. There's some feeling in there that just feels a little icky, just feels a little staticky. It's a boundary you're crossing with yourself. And if we can just notice it and like say like, "Oh, no. No, I don't like that." It's like everything just becomes lighter. It's like as soon as we can just align with the boundaries consistently, we don't have to worry anymore. We just feel lighter. All right, next tool, the thrill of meaning. That's the happy life. If you are a person who has a current life situation where you feel a little empty, you have a sense of longing, know that it is not a symptom of lacking the right stuff or not having a relationship or not having the career you want or whatever the thing is. It's very likely the result of not having a source of meaning in your life. And by that I mean something that deeply resonates with you. And that can be very random and small. It doesn't mean like if you're a lawyer, quit and move to Ecuador and work with an orphanage. It's just it can be something very small, but you need a practice in your life that connects deeply to a source of meaning for you. And by that I mean righting a wrong for you. So journal on that if it has any resonance whatsoever. Next tool is also a journal prompt. My story. I've given this before, but I wanted to bring it back because I think it's really important to think about the story you are telling yourself about yourself. And as a frame for this journal entry, I just want you to think there's a little wrapped group of children, they're kindergartners, and you're telling them a story about your life. Those kindergartners will feel it very immediately. And if you change that story, the group will respond real time. Emotionally, they will feel it, they will experience it. And so, whatever your story is about your life and what it is, I want you to, if it's a sad, terrible, stress filled story that's filled with doom and like, this is my problem, this is always going to be my problem, and it's never going to change. Like, those kindergartners are like feeling really sad. I want you to just try rewriting a nice story. And I'll offer you one right now to try on. I am creating a peaceful, non hurried existence. And that is something that is possible for me and will be for me. It is something that we all can have. And if you feel so compelled after this process, I want you to also look at what you have to do tomorrow. Like, what's on your to-do list? Is there a to-do list? Is that to-do list reflective of something that will support a positive story? And if not, how can I bring in one thing that does? All right. The last tool, I just love this one. It's a very weird one. It's called All That a Little Pot Can Do. It's a personal reflection. I want you to choose an ordinary object, a tool that you use a lot in your life. I chose a small pot in my kitchen. If this is like an annoying practice to you, just use the same one. Make it just a little small pot. Maybe yours is your favorite pencil set or um, your laptop. I don't know. Whatever it is, it's like a tool. And if you look at this object, whatever you've chosen, just think about how much it has done, how much it has created. How amazing is that? This thing has made so many marvelous dishes, so many delicious combinations of foods, and has fed so many people. So this little pot is just like you. And I just want you to marvel at that for a moment. All that you create and make true, all that you bring to the lives of others, all that you have organized and built, all that you have made with your hands, all the love that you have given to others, all the conversations you have gifted to others that have actualized change and realizations for them. All of this capacity, you are limitless. You are filled with so much potential. You create so much in this world. Never forget that. Never underestimate that. It's a wonderful and amazing thing, all that you are. So before I close, I wanted to send out a big hug and a thank you to all my sponsors, my Patreon patrons, all of my sponsors via Yay With Me. A big love to you all. Anyone who has the means, donations always help out the show. If you don't, if you could share this with someone who could help, that helps me as well. So in closing, what is your expectation of the world? What is your expectation of your day, of what is going to happen today? Whatever you notice you are defaulting to, just remember to come back into that feeling of safety. Like cleaning our energy is really just soothing ourselves so we can get back home away from that fear hurt energy. And when it comes up in a cloud, we have to acknowledge it and give it some witnessing so we can move past it because our energy spreads and it creates roots outward or waves, literally. If you've listened to the telepathy tapes, then it will give you an idea of just how important our energy and our consciousness and truth is. Being aligned with truth. It's our gateway to our life. So our mission is really just How do I move through the world without fear, anxiety, a need to control clouding my flow toward the future? And knowing that all times are now, like whenever we come into this moment that is now, how can I tune? How can I tune myself? It's always possible. It's always accessible. As soon as we go into the past or the future is when we start to get lost in a story. So know that you're always empowered. You're always empowered to know. I wanted to leave you with words from my therapist. Also, side note, if the show telepathy tapes triggers you for any reason, ignore what I just said. I will put a link in the show notes in case anyone is interested. I think it's an amazing, wonderful show. But if it brings up anything for you, ignore it. I wanted to end with words from my therapist because it really changed how I was living. It was right when I first started going to my old therapist, and it was the first time anyone had said anything like it to me, and it changed everything for me. Because your expectations really do create the future. So here's what I will tell you. This is what she told me, and I want you to know as well. You can be happy. You can have a good life. You can have peace and you can have love. You can have health and good people surrounding you. And separate from what she said, that's what she said. It's true though, but I didn't believe it before then. It was the first time I really had hope for that. It's true. It is true. In order for that to happen for us, we have to learn to tolerate and welcome that into our world. We have to experience that within ourselves. And we have to start to be able to trust ourselves. And we really have to start by just having that goal to experience that safety in our relationship with ourselves. Because once we do that, the rest of the world is not at us. It's not personal. It's not a threat. There's nothing we have to grab or stick onto ourselves. It's like we know we are enough. So I hope this helps you. And I send so much love. And please smile.